The encounter at dawn. The morning mist still clung to the hills of Chandrapur when Vikram Malhotra's convoy of vehicles pulled into the small village. At 34, Vikram had transformed his startup into one of India's fastest-growing tech companies. But today he wasn't here for business. His foundation was launching a rural healthcare initiative, and he wanted to see it firsthand rather than from the comfort of his Mumbai office. "Sir, the community center is just ahead," his assistant Rohan said, scrolling through a tablet. "The local health worker who coordinated everything is waiting to give you a tour." Vikram nodded, adjusting his simple cotton shirt. Despite his wealth, he preferred understated elegance to flashy displays. The villagers gathered curiously as the vehicles stopped. Children peeked from behind their mothers' saris, pointing at the strangers. That's when he first saw Pallavi Sharma. She stood confidently at the entrance of the newly renovated center, wearing a modest salwar kameez with a doctor's coat, her hair tied in a practical bun. No makeup, no pretense, just a warm, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Welcome to Chandrapur, Mr. Malhotra," she said, extending her hand with a formal professionalism that caught him off guard. "I'm Pallavi, the community health coordinator. We're grateful for your foundation's support." Her voice carried both softness and strength. As they shook hands, Vikram noticed calluses on her palm, evidence of someone who worked with her hands, not just her words. "The pleasure is mine," he replied, surprised by how quickly she had shifted from formality to guiding him through the facility. Pallavi moved with purpose, explaining how they'd transformed the once dilapidated building into a functional health center. Before, pregnant women had to travel 40 kilometers for basic checkups. Now we can monitor them here, identify complications early, and save lives. The passion in her voice was unmistakable. This wasn't a job for her. It was a mission. Throughout the morning, Vikram observed how the villagers respected her. An elderly man touched her feet in gratitude. A young mother brought her baby specifically to show Pallavi how well the child was thriving under her care. "You've accomplished remarkable things with limited resources," Vikram said during a brief tea break. Pallavi smiled, the sunlight catching the simple silver earrings that were her only adornment. "When resources are scarce, you learn to make every rupee count. But more than money, it's about building trust. These people need to know someone cares before they'll accept help." By afternoon, what was scheduled as a 2-hour visit had stretched to 5. Vikram canceled his next appointment, captivated not just by the project but by the woman behind it. As sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Vikram found himself walking with Pallavi along a path overlooking the village. "My father was the school headmaster here," she explained when he asked about her connection to Chandrapur. "After medical college, I could have stayed in the city, but I saw how desperately rural areas need healthcare workers." "No regrets?" Vikram asked. Pallavi stopped, looking out at the humble houses below. "Every day I help someone who would otherwise suffer. How could I regret that?" In that moment, surrounded by simplicity and sincerity, something shifted in Vikram's world. The woman beside him possessed a wealth his affluent circle couldn't comprehend, authentic purpose and joy. "I'd like to expand this program," he said suddenly. "Would you consider advising us on other locations?" Pallavi's eyes widened slightly. "I'd be honored, but I should warn you, I'll be brutally honest about what works and what doesn't." Vikram laughed. "I wouldn't expect anything less." Neither could have predicted that this conversation would be the first of many, or that fate had just set in motion a journey that would challenge everything they thought they knew about love, worth, and courage. Whispers behind silk curtains. 6 months after their first meeting in Chandrapur, Vikram found himself checking his phone more frequently than during any business negotiation. Pallavi's messages, insightful, often amusing observations about her day, had become the highlight of his. Their professional relationship had evolved through weekly video calls about the healthcare initiative, weekend visits to potential new sites, and eventually, dinners that stretched long into the evening. "You seem distracted today, Beta," observed Vikram's mother, Rajeshwari Malhotra, during their weekly family dinner at the Malhotra mansion in Juhu. The sprawling seaside property, with its marble floors and antique chandeliers, stood as a testament to 3 generations of business success. "Just thinking about the Chandrapur project," Vikram replied, not yet ready to share how central Pallavi had become to his thoughts. His cousin Arnav smirked from across the table. "The project or that village doctor who runs it? Your assistant mentioned you've been spending quite a lot of time there." A hush fell over the table. Vikram's mother set down her fork carefully, pearl bangles clinking against fine china. "What village doctor?" she asked, her voice maintaining its cultured softness while her eyes sharpened. "Pallavi is a community health worker, not a doctor," Vikram corrected, irritated by Arnav's tone. "And yes, she's been instrumental in making the project successful." Later that night, in the privacy of her sitting room, Rajeshwari called her sister-in-law Sunita. "I think Vikram is getting involved with some rural girl," she whispered, though the servants had long gone to bed. "You know how idealistic he can be. Remember that phase when he wanted to live in a regular apartment instead of the family home?" Sunita clicked her tongue sympathetically. "First, find out more about her family. These girls can be very clever. The Malhotra's son nearly married, their housekeeper's daughter, before they discovered her father had criminal connections." The whispers spread through the Malhotra's social circle like a slow-moving current. At charity galas and business dinners, curious questions began surfacing about Vikram's mysterious village project. His mother's friends, women who measured worth by designers worn and vacations taken, exchanged concerned glances when his name came up. Meanwhile, in Chandrapur, Pallavi faced scrutiny of a different kind. "A man like him will never seriously consider someone like you," warned her colleague Janvi over chai one evening. "You're just an interesting diversion from the society girls he usually dates." Pallavi stirred her tea thoughtfully. "We're colleagues, Janvi." "Colleagues don't look at each other the way he looks at you," Janvi replied gently. "I'm saying this as your friend. The Malhotras move in circles we can't even imagine. Their world has different rules, but rules seemed irrelevant whenever they were together." During a weekend in Goa for a healthcare conference, walking along the beach at sunset, Vikram had taken Pallavi's hand and confessed feelings that had grown far beyond professional admiration. "I know this might seem sudden," he'd said, the usual confidence in his voice replaced by vulnerability. "But being with you feels more real than anything I've experienced." Pallavi had hesitated, the warnings from friends and family echoing in her mind, but the sincerity in his eyes outweighed her doubts. "I feel the same," she'd admitted. "But our worlds are so different, Vikram." "Then we'll build our own," he'd replied. That conversation had led to many more, and 3 months later, to a proposal, on the same hill where they'd first walked in Chandrapur. The simple ring he'd chosen, a single emerald that matched her eyes rather than the flamboyant diamond his family would have expected, felt perfect on her finger. News of their engagement reached Mumbai before they did. Vikram's phone buzzed, constantly with messages from family members demanding explanations. His mother had sent a terse text. "Come home immediately. We need to talk." The evening they arrived at the Malhotra mansion, Pallavi wore her finest silk sari, a deep maroon handed down from her mother. Simple gold earrings and a small bindi completed her look. She knew she couldn't compete with the designer fashions of Vikram's world, but she wouldn't pretend to be someone she wasn't. As they entered the ornate living room, Rajeshwari sat waiting like a queen granting audience, flanked by Vikram's father Suresh and his uncle Pramod, the family patriarchs. Their expressions ranged from bewilderment to thinly veiled disapproval. "So," Rajeshwari said, her gaze sweeping over Pallavi's simple appearance, "this is the girl who has managed to enchant my son so completely that he didn't even consult his family before proposing." Behind the silk curtains of propriety, the battle lines were being drawn. The whispers that had started months ago were about to become shouts, and both Vikram and Pallavi would soon discover just how far the Malhotra family would go to preserve what they considered suitable for their name and legacy. The storm before vows. The weeks leading to the wedding became a battlefield of wills. After that first tense meeting, Rajeshwari Malhotra had maintained a veneer of reluctant acceptance, but her actions spoke volumes. Wedding planners were hired and dismissed without Pallavi's input. Venue choices mysteriously became unavailable when Pallavi expressed interest in them. Traditional pre-wedding celebrations were scheduled when her parents couldn't attend. "It's just how these things work in families like ours," Vikram explained one evening after another frustrating call with his mother. "The wedding is as much a social statement as a celebration." Pallavi sat cross-legged on the floor of her modest apartment, surrounded by patient files she'd been reviewing. "I understand that, but your mother rejected the mehendi artist my family has used for generations because she wasn't prestigious enough. This isn't about traditions, it's about erasing mine." Deep down, Vikram knew she was right. He'd watched his mother orchestrate a systematic campaign to remold Pallavi into something the Malhotra circle would find acceptable. Shopping trips were arranged with his cousins to help Pallavi select appropriate clothing. Elocution lessons were suggested to refine her accent. Even her hairstyle became a topic of debate among his aunts. When Pallavi's parents arrived in Mumbai 2 weeks before the wedding, the contrast between the families became painfully apparent. Her father, Rajendra Sharma, a retired school teacher with stooped shoulders and calloused hands, looked overwhelmed by the opulence of the 5-star hotel, where Vikram had insisted on hosting them. Her mother, Lakshmi, wore her best silk sari, but still felt underdressed beside Rajeshwari's designer ensemble during their first meeting. "They're good people," Vikram assured his parents after the awkward lunch. "Educated, respected in their community. Education without the right connections means little," his father replied. "What will our business associates think? The Singhania family just married their daughter to an industrialist's son. The Mehtas arranged a match with a diplomat's family, and we're bringing in village teachers?" The night before the wedding, disaster struck. During the Sangeet ceremony, Vikram's aunt Kanta cornered Pallavi's mother near the dessert table. "Such a lovely arrangement," Kanta said, gesturing toward the lavish decorations. "It must be overwhelming for you coming from such simple means. Tell me, how much did your family contribute to all this?" Lakshmi's face flushed with humiliation. "We've given what we could." "Of course, dear," Kanta patted her arm condescendingly. "No one expects much. After all, everyone knows Vikram is marrying down." Pallavi, approaching with a plate of sweets for her mother, overheard the exchange. The plate nearly slipped from her hands. "My parents have contributed everything that matters," she said, her voice low but steady. "They've raised a daughter with values and strength. What have you contributed to this family besides gossip and judgment?" The music seemed to dim as heads turned. Kanta's face darkened with anger. "This is exactly what we feared," she hissed. "No breeding, no manners. You'll embarrass us all." By morning, the incident had metastasized. Pallavi woke to frantic calls from her bridesmaids. Vikram's mother had summoned an emergency family meeting. Rumors circulated that several key relatives were threatening to boycott the ceremony. The wedding venue buzzed with tension as decorators worked under the cloud of uncertainty. When Pallavi arrived at the venue, already dressed in her bridal lehenga, a compromise between her taste and Rajeshwari's insistence on grandeur, she found chaos. Vikram's cousins huddled in corners, whispering urgently. Her own family stood awkwardly near the entrance, isolated and uncertain. In the bride's preparation room, her friend Janvi adjusted her veil with trembling hands. "They're saying terrible things," Janvi whispered. "Vikram's uncle Pramod is demanding he reconsider. His mother is in tears, claiming you deliberately insulted the family." Pallavi closed her eyes, fighting back her own tears. "Where is Vikram?" "With his family. They've been behind closed doors for over an hour." Inside that room, the storm had reached its peak. Rajeshwari stood before her son, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. "If you go through with this, you're choosing her over your own blood," she declared. "This girl has already shown she has no respect for our family or our traditions." Vikram's father added gravely, "Consider your position in the company. The board members and investors all respect family values. This kind of scandal, Scandal? Vikram interrupted. What scandal? That I'm marrying someone who wasn't born into wealth? His cousin Arnav, who had started the Whispers months ago, spoke. It's not about money, it's about compatibility. She doesn't fit our world, Vikram. Everyone can see it except you. As the designated wedding hour approached, guests filled the hall, sensing the undercurrent of drama. Pallavi's parents sat stiffly in the front row, dignity their only shield, against the scrutinizing stares. The priest checked his watch repeatedly. The musicians played at half volume, unsure if they should continue. Then a side door opened. Rajeshwari emerged, eyes red but posture regal, followed by Suresh and the other family elders. They took their places without looking at Pallavi's family. A hush fell over the gathering. The question hung unspoken in the air. Where was the groom? Had the Malhotra family succeeded in stopping what they considered a misalliance? Pallavi stood alone at the entrance to the mandap, her heart pounding against the embroidered fabric of her lehenga, waiting to learn if her love story would end before it had truly begun. A stand among thorns. The silence in the wedding hall stretched like a thread pulled too tight, ready to snap. 500 guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging glances that ranged from concerned to morbidly curious. The magnificent flower arrangements, crystal chandeliers, and silk draperies, all selected by Rajeshwari to impress her social circle, now framed a scene of potential humiliation. Pallavi stood at the threshold, her hennied hands trembling slightly. The weight of her bridal jewelry suddenly felt suffocating. She caught her father's eye in the front row. His expression carried a lifetime of warnings about reaching beyond one's station. Beside him, her mother clutched her purse with white knuckles, dignity her only armor against the whispers around them. 10 minutes passed beyond the scheduled time. The priest cleared his throat awkwardly. Rajeshwari sat stone-faced, her victory seemingly assured. Her son had finally come to his senses. Then the side door opened again. Vikram emerged alone, his expression unreadable as he walked deliberately toward the center of the hall. Instead of proceeding to the mandap, he stopped in the middle of the aisle. The murmuring died instantly. Before we continue, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the hall without a microphone, I need to address something. Pallavi's heart sank. Was he about to announce the cancellation? To apologize to the guests for the inconvenience? She steeled herself for the blow. I've spent the last hour listening to concerns from people I've respected all my life. Vikram continued. They've questioned my judgment. They've suggested I'm making a mistake that will damage our family name and business reputation. A few approving nods came from his relatives' section. His mother straightened in her seat. These people, Vikram gestured toward his family's side, built an empire from nothing. They taught me the value of legacy, of making decisions that stand the test of time. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room until it found Pallavi. When their eyes met, the softening of his expression was visible to everyone. But today they've forgotten the most important lesson they ever taught me. My grandfather used to say, a man's true wealth isn't in his bank account, but in the integrity of his choices. Vikram walked slowly toward Pallavi, each step deliberate. I stand before you making the most honest choice of my life. I choose Pallavi, not despite where she comes from, but because of who she is. A woman who left comfort to serve those without voice or privilege. A woman who measures worth by contribution, not consumption. He reached her, taking her hands in his. If anyone here believes her family has nothing to offer ours, you've missed everything of value. Her parents raised a daughter with compassion, intelligence, and unshakable courage, qualities no amount of money can buy. Turning back to face the guests, still holding Pallavi's hand, Vikram's voice gained strength. I've heard concerns about compatibility, about our world versus hers. Let me be clear. Any world that would reject someone based on their bank balance rather than their character is not a world I wish to belong to. A gasp rippled through the Malhotra section. Rajeshwari's carefully composed facade cracked slightly. To those who would judge us, Vikram continued, ask yourselves what you truly value. status that exists only in others' perceptions, or the courage to recognize true worth when you find it. He looked directly at his parents now. You raised me to lead, not follow, to recognize value where others might miss it. That's exactly what I'm doing today. Facing Pallavi again, his voice softened. If you still want to marry me, knowing that some may never accept you, I'm ready to walk to that mandap right now. The hall held its collective breath. In that moment, it wasn't just Vikram being tested, but Pallavi too. The path forward promised struggle alongside joy, a lifetime of proving herself to people determined to find her lacking. Pallavi took a deep breath, aware of hundreds of eyes upon her. She thought of her simple childhood home, of patients who trusted her with their lives, of the dignity her parents had modeled throughout their modest lives. I fell in love with a man who sees people for who they are, not what they own, she said, her voice clear despite its softness. That's the man I want to marry. That's the family I choose to build. She squeezed his hands and smiled. Yes, I still want to marry you. Something shifted in the atmosphere, like the moment when monsoon clouds finally break and the first raindrops fall after weeks of oppressive heat. From the back of the hall, someone began to applaud. Others joined, tentatively at first, then with growing conviction. Vikram's youngest cousin, Priya, rose from beside her disapproving mother and walked forward, touching Pallavi's arm in solidarity before taking her place as a bridesmaid, a position she'd been forbidden from accepting earlier. One by one, friends from both sides moved to surround the couple, forming a protective circle of support. Most of the Malhotra elders remained seated, faces tight with disapproval. But Vikram's father, Suresh, after a long look at his wife, slowly stood. The gesture, not quite acceptance but a step away from rejection, sent another wave of whispers through the gathering. As Vikram and Pallavi walked hand in hand toward the mandap, the path before them remained thorny, but they no longer walked it alone. In taking his stand among those thorns, Vikram had not only defended his choice but had revealed to everyone present the true meaning of worth, and in doing so, had begun to transform both worlds they inhabited. Blossoms after rain, the first year of marriage unfolded like a cautious spring after a harsh winter. The wedding itself had concluded with mixed emotions, joy from those who witnessed love, triumph over prejudice, lingering resentment from the Malhotra elders who felt their social standing had been compromised. When Vikram and Pallavi departed for their honeymoon in Bali, they left behind a family divided and a social circle buzzing with contradictory accounts of what many now called the wedding speech. Do you regret it? Pallavi had asked on their third night in Bali as they walked along a moonlit beach. Standing up to your family that way? Vikram had pulled her close, the ocean breeze carrying the scent of frangipani. I only regret that it was necessary at all. Upon their return to Mumbai, the newlyweds moved into a spacious but understated apartment in Bandra, far from the Malhotra mansion in Juhu, but close enough for family obligations. Pallavi resumed her work, now expanded through Vikram's foundation to oversee rural healthcare initiatives across 3 states. Vikram immersed himself in growing his company's innovative education technology division. Sunday family dinners at the Malhotra mansion became exercises in polite tension. Rajeshwari maintained a cool civility toward her daughter-in-law, neither openly hostile nor genuinely welcoming. Pallavi's attempts to assist with serving or cleanup were rebuffed as inappropriate for the wife of a Malhotra. When she spoke about her work, the conversation would subtly shift to more suitable topics, charity galas or the latest designer collections. Give them time, Vikram would say on their drives home, the Mumbai skyline glittering against the night sky. They're adjusting. To what exactly, Pallavi would counter. To the fact that I exist? That I won't pretend to be someone I'm not to make them comfortable? The turning point came unexpectedly, 6 months after the wedding. Rajeshwari had organized her annual charity fundraiser, a lavish affair that doubled as a display of the family's social connections. Traditionally, the daughter-in-law would help coordinate, but Pallavi had been pointedly excluded from planning meetings. On the evening of the event, as Mumbai's elite mingled in designer finery, the guest of honor, a prominent pediatric surgeon meant to speak about the hospital wing the fundraiser would support, fell ill. The carefully orchestrated evening teetered on the edge of embarrassing failure. Dr. Menon sends his deepest apologies, the surgeon's assistant explained to a visibly distressed Rajeshwari. Food poisoning. He can barely stand. As whispers spread, among the guests, Pallavi approached her mother-in-law. I can speak about the rural healthcare challenges that make facilities like the new wing so crucial, she offered quietly. I've worked with many families who traveled hours to reach basic pediatric care. Rajeshwari hesitated, trapped between potential social embarrassment and accepting help from the very woman she'd tried to marginalize. These people donated expecting Dr. Menon, she said, her voice tight. They donated to help children, Pallavi replied simply. Let me help them understand why it matters. With reluctance born of desperation, Rajeshwari nodded. What followed transformed more than just the evening. Without notes or preparation, Pallavi spoke from experience, not with statistics or platitudes, but with stories of real children, real families, and real challenges. She described a young mother who carried her feverish toddler 12 kilometers because no transportation was available, an 8-year-old boy who lost partial vision because a simple infection wasn't treated in time, the preventable tragedies and hard-won victories she'd witnessed. The room fell silent. Cocktail glasses paused midway to lips as Pallavi painted a reality far removed from the glittering ballroom. When she concluded by connecting these experiences to the impact the new hospital wing would have, the applause was spontaneous and genuine. Donation pledges doubled the expected amount that night. Later, as guests departed, several of Rajeshwari's friends approached Pallavi, not with condescension, but with thoughtful questions about her work. Vikram's aunt Kanta, who had been among the most vocal critics before the wedding, lingered longest. My late husband was from a small village, she admitted quietly. I visited once, early in our marriage, and never returned. Perhaps that was a mistake. The following Sunday dinner felt subtly different. When Pallavi mentioned a challenging case from her clinic, Rajeshwari asked a follow-up question instead of changing the subject. Suresh inquired about the expansion of the healthcare program. Small shifts, but significant. 2 months later, Rajeshwari unexpectedly appeared at Pallavi's clinic in Chandrapur. She stood awkwardly in the waiting area, designer silk jarringly out of place among the plastic chairs and faded posters about vaccination schedules. I wanted to see, she explained when Pallavi emerged from an examination room. To understand. They walked through the facility in silence. Pallavi introduced her to staff and patients without elaborating on who this elegant visitor was. They observed a prenatal class, a vaccination drive, an elder care consultation. As they shared a simple lunch of roti and dal in Pallavi's modest office, Rajeshwari finally spoke. When Vikram was born, I had the best doctors, a private suite, nurses attending to my every need. And still, I was terrified. She looked out the window at a pregnant woman being helped from a bicycle rickshaw. I can't imagine doing it here. Most don't have a choice, Pallavi replied. Rajeshwari nodded slowly. You've built something important. After a pause, she added, He chose well. The words hung between them, not quite an apology, but a beginning. On their first anniversary, Vikram and Pallavi hosted a celebration at their apartment, deliberately inviting both families. Pallavi's parents, still somewhat uncomfortable in the presence of the Malhotras, brought homemade sweets and simple gifts. Rajeshwari arrived with an unexpected offering, a family heirloom, a gold necklace that had belonged to Vikram's grandmother. She was a teacher before she married into the family, Rajeshwari explained as she fastened it around Pallavi's neck. Strong-willed, unsuitable, according to the standards of her time. You would have liked each other. As the evening progressed, the two families found unexpected common ground. Pallavi's father and Suresh discovered a shared passion for classical music. Her mother exchanged recipes with Vikram's aunt. The younger cousins from both sides played card games, their laughter bridging worlds that had seemed unbridgeable a year before. Standing on their balcony later that night, watching the city lights, below, Vikram slipped his arm around Pallavi's waist. "Look at them," he said, nodding toward their families mingling in the living room. "Not perfect, but progress." Pallavi leaned against him. "Like saplings after a forest fire. It takes time, but life finds a way. Any regrets?" he asked, echoing her question from their honeymoon. She touched the heirloom necklace now resting against her collarbone, a physical symbol of acceptance that had seemed impossible a year ago. "Not one," she answered truthfully. "Some paths are harder but lead to better places." Inside, Rajeshwari was showing Pallavi's mother photos from Vikram's childhood, their heads bent together over the album. They looked briefly like any two women united by love for the same people, not divided by circumstances of birth or bank accounts. The journey wasn't complete. Old prejudices wouldn't disappear overnight. There would still be family members who maintained their distance, social acquaintances who exchanged knowing looks when Pallavi spoke. But something fundamental had shifted, like Earth after an earthquake settling into a new formation. In taking their stand for love over convention, Vikram and Pallavi had created more than just their own happiness. They had opened a small but significant crack in walls built over generations, allowing light to filter through, illuminating possibilities for others to follow.